Welcome to a guide to assist you in your necromancy leveling journey. Whenever you're ready, grab your cup of tea, sit back, relax, and enjoy. This guide was created during the necromancy grace period in which many normal XP boosts do not work. There are, however, a few that do work, including the Inspire or Relic power, Torstal Incense Sticks, and the Wise perk. In case you're watching this video as it turns about 6 months old, consider using these other buffs for more XP per hour, as in 6 months the grace period should have ended. Necromancy is a skill that will cause you to come into contact with multiple other skills on your way to level 99. For that reason, I'm showing you this preparation image created by Runescape themselves to give you an idea of what you can expect to need at some point during your progression. The most important skills by far are crafting and smithing, as you'll be using those to upgrade your gear. If you don't have all of these quests or skills just yet, don't worry, but you will need at least some of them on your way to level 99. My advice would be to just get started and see what you need on your way to level 99 and beyond. If you're an existing player, there's a million different buffs that can assist you during your necromancy training, but in specific I'd like to mention the Salve Amulet E, unlocked from the Haunted Mine quest, which can be enchanted after doing the Lair of Tarn Razalor mini quest. This item is going to be huge in the early to mid game, as you're going to be fighting a bunch of undead creatures, especially if you're following this guide. Now, like I said, for combat there can be a million different things that can help you out, so I'm not going to be talking about useful items in this guide because there are simply too many to mention, but I wanted to point out the Salve Amulet in specific. Let's get started. To start your necromancy journey, head over to the Draenor Lodestone and inspect the underworld portal to start the tutorial. After completing this tutorial, which I highly suggest you read through to understand the basics, you will be brought up to level 5 necromancy and have access to a brand new area called the City of This area has its own lodestone, and I suggest you activate it straight away as you'll be using it often. Okay, so what's next? Well, the first thing you're going to want to do is head over to the Ghost Troll Cave found in the southeastern outskirts of the City of In here you'll find a large amount of ghost trolls that are easy to take out. The amount of experience you gain per troll kill depends on the amount of damage you've dealt personally to that troll, as it's based on your own contribution. For every 1000 damage you deal, you'll gain 50 necromancy experience. As you progress to level 20, you'll notice that you're unlocking new abilities like the Touch of Death basic ability and the Finger of Death threshold. Hovering over these abilities will tell you a lot about how they function. Basic abilities, including the basic attack that is performed automatically when you have a target, generates adrenaline, indicated by the yellow bar above your character or your action bar. That adrenaline can be used to activate thresholds and ultimate abilities, which are your typical spenders. As this is mainly a leveling guide, I'm going to keep it short combat wise, but I do plan to add a dedicated combat guide to this video's description in the future. As soon as you hit level 20, start the Killiro quest by speaking to Killy, who can be found in the northeastern part of the city. In this quest, you'll have to ensoul Killy's tools using a ritual. However, your basic ghostly ink won't be enough to start the ritual, as you need to draw a change glyph, which requires basic and regular ghostly ink to draw. If you're a regular count, simply buy this from the Grand Exchange if you want to save some time. Otherwise, you can create a regular ghostly ink by using 20 lesser necroplasm, a vial of water, and regular ashes. Lesser necroplasm is obtained from the lesser necroplasm ritual. That ritual turns weak necroplasm into lesser necroplasm. If you don't have any weak necroplasm, go ahead and visit Loop, found on the northwestern side of the city, for some basic ritual supplies. After that, place them in your focus storage to avoid having to keep them in your inventory. After ensouling Killy's tools and bringing them back to him, you're going to have to fill a urn with either 5 chicken souls or 1 complete communion ritual. It's up to you to choose which path you take, but since you're going to be completing a few communion rituals soon anyway, you might as well do that path. After completing the quest, you'll be able to upgrade your gear to level 20 in a similar process by ensouling basic materials using those rituals. It's worth pointing out that you should be doing this every 10 necromancy levels, as otherwise you'll be under geared. You cannot buy higher tier gear, and actively need to craft it before you can wear it. So every 10 levels you're going to return to Keeley to complete a sort of Slayer task mini quest to then be able to upgrade your gear. If you're an existing player and you have high level hybrid armor, you can use that while only upgrading your weapons if you'd like to for now. Examples of hybrid armor include War Priest, Animacorp Sliske, Crystal Armor, and Agrise equipment. After upgrading your gear, you should complete a second short necromancy quest in this leveling range called Rune Mythos. You can access this quest at level 24 Necromancy, and it introduces you to Necro rune crafting and incantations. After this quest, you will be able to quickly teleport back to the ritual site by using spirit runes and a brand new incantation. If you don't have level 24 yet, simply return to the Ghost Troll Cave for some experience. After completing the quest, you're going to be doing the exact same thing by leveling yourself up to level 30 Necromancy if needed by killing Ghost Trolls in the Ghost Troll Cave. At level 30 Necromancy, you're going to want to do lesser communion rituals until you have at least 400 souls to unlock 2 tiers, 40 and 400 of the Well of Souls talent tree. Before you start this ritual, remember that the highest tier of bone or memento you can afford will give you more souls per ritual, decreasing the amount of time this will take. Remember that you can place your supplies, so bones and mementos, in the focus storage to keep your inventory nice and clean. You're able to increase the amount of souls you gain per ritual by using alteration glyphs accessed by clicking a drop-down menu. Using 2 of these will increase your soul output by 40%, but it's not going to be that big of a deal, so if you want to save some ink at this point in time, just don't bother. You're able to perform these rituals consecutively, so clicking the pad over and over as long as your glyphs and candles have not degraded is what you want to be doing. If something is broken, simply right-click the pedestal and choose the Repair All option. As long as you have this setting turned on, so with a check mark, you will only repair components that have completely broken as to not waste materials. When doing these rituals, you'll also notice disturbances that spawn in the form of sparkling pads, ghosts, or moths. You can click on these disturbances for extra necromancy experience. After getting 400 souls, I highly suggest you complete the City of Easy achievement set, as after completing this set and collecting your reward from the Ictolin NPC found at the ritual site, you will have the Tome of 1, providing multiple buffs including XP boosts and free teleports to Killy's smithy. You're going to put that teleport item straight to use, as since you're level 30 it's time to upgrade your gear and complete another one of those Killy's knowledge quests. This time you're going to need to kill either 25 trolls, which you could do in the Ghost Troll Cave, or complete 3 Lesser Communion rituals. After you've upgraded at least your weapons, head over to the Lumbridge Catacombs, which requires the Blood Pact quest. Only takes like 10 minutes if you haven't done it, to kill skeletons until level 40 Necromancy. On your way to level 40, you'll unlock a useful ability that lets you do area damage while healing yourself called Blood Siphon. Be sure to put that to good use. At level 40 Necromancy, head back to Killy to upgrade your gear yet again. This time he's going to ask you for a meat pie, and for you to kill either 50 undead creatures or complete 5 Lesser Communion rituals. You can get those 50 undead souls by going back to the catacombs and slaying a bunch of skeletons. After you've upgraded at least your weapons to tier 40, it's time to go to Banshees located in Canifis in the Slayer Tower. Please remember that before you're able to kill these, you're going to need to have level 15 Slayer, and you should bring along earmuffs if you don't have a full Slayer helmet. It's also worth noting that it's incredibly useful to have a Salve Amulet E at this point, because it gives you 20% more damage and accuracy against the undead, including Banshees. If you're a high level player watching this video, grabbing a bunch of these in terms of souls and placing them in your personal own Slayer dungeon will be better experience per hour. It's technically also possible to kill Banshees at a lower level than 40 if you have the Salve Amulet E, but for simplicity's sake I didn't mention it. If you try to kill Banshees at a lower level than 40 without the Salve Amulet E, you'll notice that your accuracy is lower, therefore your damage is lower, which will hurt your experience per hour. Like I said, in that case, stick to those skeletons until you're level 40 to get level 40 weapons, and then head over to Banshees. In this leveling range, you'll also be able to complete another quest at level 46 called the Vessel of the Harbinger. Do so as you'll need it for future progression. At level 50 Necromancy, the first thing I suggest you do is to complete the Medium City of achievements to get the Tome of 2, providing many benefits including unlimited smithy teleports and 10 ritual teleports per day. Before hopping back into combat, it's time to upgrade your gear, or at least your weapons, to at least level 50. You do this by completing another one of those Killy's mini quests. This time he'll request an apple pie, the Necromancer's Flippers, and 75 Demon Souls, or you have to complete another 10 Lesser Communion rituals. If you already have 400 total souls, I suggest going the demon route and trying to kill some imps or even lesser demons if you feel like it. For the Necromancer's Flippers, get yourself some fishing explosives from any local Slayer Master and chuck them at the bubbles at Mudskipper Point, then kill these Mogres until you get the Flippers. Combat training wise, from levels 50 to 60, assuming you've upgraded your weapons to at least level 50, will be Ankus inside the Stronghold of Security, located in the deepest level. Now at this point, if you don't have a Salve Amulet E yet, you should absolutely be getting one, because otherwise you're missing out on 20% damage and accuracy. There's multiple spots on which you can kill Anku, and depending on your gear, you're also able to AFK the spot with ghosts and Ankus combined if you're using aggression potions and you have access to things as Soul Split. Although I'm going to assume that not everyone watching this guide has access to all of those things. As a tip, remember to use your area of effect abilities such as Blood Siphon and Bloat to get the most out of your training. I was able to get around 200 and 250 XP per hour here. Once arrived at level 60 Necromancy, your ritual site will have more glyph spots as it's now tier 2. You will also have access to new rituals, including Greater Communion. This will allow you to get more souls significantly faster, assuming you use a Necromancy potion or an Overload to boost yourself to 66. You're probably wondering, what? Yes. I suggest you boost your Necromancy level now to gain access to Multiply 2 alteration glyphs. It's worth noting you'll need to boost every single time to repair these glyphs in addition to having to boost to draw them. So be sure to keep some of those potions at hand in your inventory. By having 2 Multiply 2 glyphs active, you'll gain 80% more souls per ritual, decreasing the amount of time you need to do these rituals before continuing combat training. I suggest getting 4,500 souls in total to unlock 2 different Well of Soul levels and unlock the next quest in the series. Remember that using higher tier bones will give you more souls per ritual, and if you can afford it, you can even buy spirit mementos to increase that amount even more. To complete Greater Communion rituals, you'll notice you need Greater Ghostly Ink to draw the Commune 2 glyph. Personally, I would just buy these off the Grand Exchange to save time, but if you have to make them, they are created using ashes, a vial of water, and Greater Necroplasm. Since you now have 4,500 souls, I suggest unlocking at least the following 3 abilities using 3 talent points, which are types of points you gain through getting Necro Combat experience. Spectral Scythe 1, Putrid Zombie, and once you're at level 70 Necromancy, Spectral Scythe 2. Now before we go back to combat training for this leveling range, be sure to at least upgrade your weapons to tier 60 by returning to Killy for another mini quest. This time he'll want a Garden Pie, 50 souls from monsters at least level 70, or 10 Greater Communion rituals. He'll also want Anku Residue. To get this residue, go back to Ankus and use the Anku Agitator or non-in-combat or non-aggressive Ankus and get them to attack you. Kill them, and after a couple of attempts, like 5 or 6, they will drop that residue you need for this mini quest. Now once you have your upgraded weapons, you're going to go back to combat training. I suggest you kill Shadow Warriors beneath the Legends Guild using this action bar. This action bar is mainly powerful due to the multiple AoE abilities, including the Zombie Exploding, the Scythe, and Soul Strike. Other abilities like the Skeleton Warrior and the Blood Siphon ability are just extras. For this action bar to work properly, make sure that Revolution Combat Mode is turned on in your settings to automatically use thresholds and regular abilities. Now this area does require the Legends quest to be complete, and if for whatever reason you don't feel like completing this quest, which I highly recommend you do because this place is amazing, you can stick to Ankus or try something like Slayer for other combat gains. A fast way of getting back to the Legends Guild is by using the Legends Cape, which if you've lost, you can get from this NPC at the topmost level of the building. At level 65 Necromancy, you're able to start the Spirit of War quest, a quest you're going to need for future armor upgrades. Complete this quest whenever you feel like it in this leveling range. Level 70 Necromancy is a part of your journey where you have a choice in terms of upgrading your gear. You can take either the tank or power, aka damage armor route, and if you really want, you can do both. What I recommend you do from this point on is to have a look at the tasks you need to complete and judge how difficult they are in your situation. Personally, I found that completing the tank armor task first to upgrade just my weapons and then do the power armor task was significantly easier. You can do this because there's no different version of the weapon. Unlocking either tank or power armor will give you access to the next tier weapon. At this point in time, you're also able to augment and perk up your weapons with the invention skill. The best thing about this is that the next time you upgrade your gear, your perks will upgrade along with them to the next tier. After upgrading at least your weapons, you can go back to combat training. The only reason I say this is because you're able to use hybrid armor for now, as upgrading your armor requires you to farm the Hermod boss. Personally, I waited until I had higher tier weapons to farm Hermod for the Hermodic plates to upgrade my gear, but if you want, you can try to kill the boss now. It's not a difficult boss at all, it just takes longer if you have lower tier weapons. From level 70 to 80 Necromancy, you can stick to the same Shadow Warriors found inside the Legends Guild, or alternatively try Armored Zombies. Personally, I stuck to the Warrior simply because the XP per hour was almost the same. Armored Zombies require the Defender Varrock quest to access, so keep that in mind. One thing worth mentioning, and this is an optional thing to do, is that at level 70 Necromancy, you're easily able to get yourself a Kiln Cape, aka complete the fight kiln with Necromancy. The only reason you'd want to do this is to get a Kiln Cape to then later combine with an Igneous Stone from the Zuck boss to get yourself the Necromancy Zuck Cape. You don't actually need to complete a Zuck run using Necromancy, you just need the Igneous Stone and a Necromancy Kiln Cape. It's also worth noting you can use multiple styles in the fight kiln to make it easier on yourself if you'd like to. Just make sure that you deal the majority of your damage of Necromancy in the fight kiln to obtain the Necromancy Kiln Cape. The reason you want the Necromancy Zuck Cape is because it reduces the adrenaline cost from Death Skulls down to 60% and causes it to bounce between 2 additional enemies, making it an incredibly powerful AoE and even single target ability. In case you had the hybrid cape before the update, probably a keepsake one, you'll be able to reclaim a hardened Zuck cape that dismantles into the magic, ranged and melee versions for you to then add the necromancy one to get back your hybrid Zuck cape. Finally, in this leveling range, you're also able to complete the Tomes of Warlock quest if you have level 75 necromancy. At level 80 necromancy, the first thing you're going to want to do is upgrade your weapons. Just like the previous leveling range, I suggest you complete the tank armor task first, as it's significantly easier, and then you'll be able to get your tier 80 weapons to then do the power armor task. The task is fairly simple. Bring a red berry pie, get a kill at every single Gorder's Dungeon 1 boss, and then quickly use the Spiritbound Hammer on the altar after they die to charge it. You will also need to kill 150 creatures assigned as a Slayer task. Personally, I forced a Dagnall's task using a mask and did it that way. It didn't take very long. The DPS armor task requires you to kill 5 Green Black Dragons for 5 souls and 5 necks, which is the hard part. If you want a suggestion, I recommend doing this with a friend, using non-necro gear to help either tank the damage or help a little bit with some of the phases, especially the blood phase, which is by far the hardest. Just make sure that your friend doesn't deal more damage in total than you do against the boss so that you get the drop, otherwise you will not get the Zarite fragments. One very important thing worth noting is that if you're going to be upgrading your DPS armor to tier 80, you're going to need to have a Greater Ensouled Cloth. You need subjugation to create Great Ensouled Cloth. I suggest creating Great Ensouled Cloth later rather than sooner, as you'll be able to access higher tier and more multiply alteration glyphs, allowing you to gain more out of a single piece of subjugation when performing the Greater Ensoul Material Ritual. In terms of combat leveling from levels 80 to 90, simply continue training at either Armored Zombies or the Shadow Warriors beneath the Legends Guild. There are other options like Bound Skeletons in your personal Slayer dungeon, but they're harder to AFK and the experience reward really isn't there. I'm sure there are also going to be plenty more options at this level, but these seem to be the best options for me personally. Just make sure you're killing a bunch of mobs, so large quantities with high health, and you need to have above 90% accuracy, otherwise don't do them and do something else. Finally, at level 85 Necromancer, you have the option to complete another quest called Remains of the Necrolord. Once arrived at level 90, experience will really start to speed up. The absolute first thing you need to do is to speak to Selene to unlock the Sorrow Curse. You can only do this if you have level 95 Prayer and the Temple at St. Tistan quest complete to use it. This curse will boost your damage and accuracy significantly, so always use it when in combat. At level 90, your ritual site now has even more glyph spots as it's now tier 3. You'll also gain access to powerful rituals, including powerful communion. Due to this, you'll be able to gain souls incredibly quickly, and this is the point in time where I suggest grinding out the 8500 soul range to unlock the third scythe ability for combat training. You're able to increase the amount of souls you gain per ritual by boosting your necromancy level using an overload and creating multiple multiply 3 alteration glyphs. Do note that these glyphs require an even higher tier of ghostly ink called powerful ghostly ink, created in a similar fashion to the other inks except with powerful necroplasm. If you're using 3 multiply 3 alteration glyphs and you've bought powerful mementos, you'll be able to get 210 souls per ritual, which is incredibly fast. Before getting back into combat training, attempt to complete either the tank or DPS armor task to upgrade at least your necromancy weapons to tier 90 for extra accuracy and damage. You're really going to need it. I would recommend having a friend help you out for either task, as they can take quite long. If you're familiar with the bosses, the power armor route might actually be faster. Personally, I didn't really mind killing Telos and Araxor at 0% in rage. It's worth noting that when you kill Telos, the thing you need to pick up might be very hard to spot. Before killing Araxor, you're actually going to need to create yourself a greater ensouled cloth to bring along to then use on its corpse after it died. It's not like it drops an item, you actually need to use cloth on its corpse. The real issue with the DPS challenge is that you need to get necroplasm from the ambassador, which is one of the hardest bosses in Runescape. I was fortunate enough to have a buddy assist me in completing this challenge, and he even darted the boss for me after I hit it with necromancy damage, speeding up the entire process and making it even easier. In case that method is fixed, I suggest doing this challenge in a group of 3 players, as completing Elite Dungeon 3 with a combat style you're not incredibly familiar with and trying one of the hardest bosses in this game is a recipe for disaster. It's worth noting that you do not need to complete the entire dungeon using necromancy, you only need to kill the ambassador using necromancy. After completing either challenge and upgrading your weapons, you can consider starting to upgrade your armor as well. Now at this level, with tier 90 weapons, you have a lot of options for combat training. You can do Slayer, you can do Elite Dungeons, you can do a lot of things, but personally I prefer to AFK creatures using Revolution. At Abyssal Savages, I was able to gain around 850 to 950,000 experience per hour in pure necromancy experience. I was using this action bar with the Zuck Cape to obtain that experience. The only reason the Ghost is on number 5 is for extra healing, as it's quite a tough area even if you have the upgraded Infernal Puzzle Box for extra damage and damage reduction. I was using a Vampirism Aura and Protect from Magic at all times to stay alive. I also suggest having the Demon Slayer ability and Enhanced Devoted on your gear if you have access to Invention. If you're struggling with healing somehow, you can also use a Bunyip Familiar for passive healing. If you do not have access to the Zuck Cape, I suggest using this action bar instead. You can also kill Abyssal Savages in the Asylum. Assuming you don't get crashed, you still gain around 850 to 900,000 experience per hour. In the Asylum, I didn't really need the healing from the Ghost, so while using the Vampirism Aura, I simply swapped the Ghost for the Skeleton Warrior instead as my main conjure for extra damage. Abyssal Beasts are another good option, and you can find these in the Wilderness, in the Asylum, and you can even place them in your personal Slayer dungeon if you'd like, but they require 105 Slayer instead of 95 compared to the Savages. Like I said, there are a lot of options at this level, just make sure your accuracy is good and you're able to sustain yourself without dying. The examples mentioned here are just creatures I personally use to get to level 99. Now at level 90, the amount of XP you can gain per ritual increases dramatically as you're able to have more alteration glyphs active. I'm not entirely sure at this point whether it's worth having super high soul attraction, so above 1000%, but I can say that having over 500% using the attraction 2 or 3 glyphs, depending on what you can boost for, is incredibly good. During rituals and reacting to all types of disturbance events can net you 1 to 2 million experience per hour. Personally, I did the powerful Essence ritual with 3 attraction 3 glyphs, and at level 99 you're able to use your Skill Cape perk to activate an additional glyph for free, although you're not able to use Potion Boost to activate a higher level glyph using the Skill Cape perk. New disturbances you'll encounter at this point are the Shambling Horror event, which seems bugged as it's very hard to do properly currently. You're supposed to click it once to sever the link and then click a pad, which sparkles, but I've almost never seen it sparkle properly, even with skybox filters. There's just way too much going on when doing rituals, and it's very intensive. Personally, I ignore this one. Corruption glyphs, which are these 3 green things, need to be clicked in order from 1, 2, and 3 to gain experience from. Soulstorm is a disturbance you can spam click to gain XP from 3 times in a row if you're fast enough, and the default event requires you to click every so often to charge the bar. Personally, I would just stick to doing combat training, as rituals are incredibly click intensive and just visually so much is going on. Even if you're using candles to reduce the amount of times you need to repair your stuff, I mean higher tier candles, personally I would suggest doing combat. It's just way more chill and relaxed. Yes, it's slower, but you're going to save your eyes and your fingers. Finally, at level 95 Necromancy, if you have 30,000 souls, you're able to unlock the Raziel boss by completing the Alpha Omega quest. To buy your skill cape, head over to this NPC found in the southwestern part of the city. If you found the guide helpful, don't forget to drop a like down below and maybe even consider subscribing. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.